Nice warm welcome for Congresswoman. Thank you.
Let me sit next
to you
here.
Right here.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll do a little fireside chat with you. Thanks for joining us. So how was
I'm
yesterday
delighted.
for you?
How was yesterday?
Yeah.
Well, last night was great.
Yeah, was it so what did you guys have any down
that
ticket?
Sounds a little
No, I mean I asked the congressman the same question. He said, lots of Dems picked up seats in Pennsylvania. So I'm just sort of interested, were there California races that were down ticket that mattered?
No.
Nothing in California.
We didn't have anything in California. This is an off year for California.
I see.
Whereas Virginia and some other places very purposefully hold their gubernatorial elections down ballot in the off year, which is really quite interesting.
So Congressman Costello just said you're one of the greats. He said he's looking forward to getting to know you better.
Nice.
He said he's still working on it.
Nice.
But we were basically kind of looking and kind of trying to project ourselves forward 10 years or so. Look at this Internet of Thing and this kind of we're all connected, and asking fundamental questions about what that world looks like, and kind of looking at what the trade-offs are between our security and the opportunities. And I'm just interested because I know you've been on both sides of that. Silicon Valley loves you, and yet you've been out there raising a lot of the big concerns about data, privacy, security. So how do you get those equities right?
Well, one hopes that we will get the equities right. I don't know. I think, sometimes we do, and then a new administration comes in and doesn't like it and wipes it out, i.e. privacy and the Internet. It took a long time to accomplish that, and it was like just a bolt of lightning struck, and it seemed like a matter of congressional minutes, and it was gone. It was just gone. And I think of all the years of my congressional life that I fought for that, and I had legislation on it. So obviously, we all hope that we get it right. We understand that what we do is it takes a long time to build a legislative effort and get it over the line. You want to make sure that you don't, I think, that you don't set specific standards in legislation. You don't do the inner engineering. You leave that to the private sector or to an agency in the government that knows how to set those standards, because technology moves so quickly. It can be outdated before the ink is dry. So you really have to be very careful about it. But having said that, we have a responsibility for the public good in the country. So all of the people that come to us with legitimacy have their own interests. And that's the way our system works. So you need to listen very well, I think, to the best people that really know what they're talking about. And I'm not afraid to ask what I would call a sophomoric question, because I'm not an engineer, and I never wanted to be one. I love what I do, but I need to know what they do, how they do it, and how it enhances our work. There are two big things, I think, in terms of this issue of the Internet of Things. We know that we have been part of a digital revolution. There's no question about it. I think in the beginning, there were many people that thought of it as a luxury item, but now this has permeated our lives. And I'm very proud of it, because it's American genius that invented it. So this is an example of I think, a continuation of the genius of the framers, because they were the original innovators in terms of their thinking. They were entrepreneurs, and they certainly were risk takers. So I like to think that that's in our DNA.
But did they build checks? Did they build checks and balances into the digital?
They did. No, they didn't. That's our job to do.
I see.
That's our job to do. We stand on their shoulders.
Why do you think? Why do you think it is so hard when you know? I know that you were interviewing the CEO of Equifax in a hearing recently, and kind of tough on him.
Why not?
And I remember Andy Grove.
$143 million people who
Right.
are affected by that.
Yeah.
So,
how,
I don't think
you've
it's
been
time
at this
for
for a
Tea
while.
Party.
How many Equifaxes do you think are out there still yet to unfold?
I can't tell you that. I think that there is, with interoperability comes vulnerability. And we live in an increasingly connected everything. That's what the Internet of Things is really about, that it spreads out and touches everything. So it's not only what kids use today to do their homework. They need to be connected. They need spectrum in order to be connected.
Congressman Costello just talked about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's also what a farmer can plant in the ground to inform him about the condition of the soil and what it may need. So it has permeated everything. Two things: privacy and a national security issue, cybersecurity. In my district, we have, they're really right on the edge of bringing this out now. Driverless cars.
Right.
There's also more than one enterprise that I have visited with that is working on public transportation, driverless vehicles. Now imagine, and that they depend on interoperability.
Right.
But imagine the bad guys and what they can do. So you have traffic, we depend on synchronized lights, except Washington, D.C. doesn't have them. They haven't heard of them yet.
Only 15th
That's
Street.
right. Well, I'm not familiar with that
15th
one.
15th Street's the
But,
only
it just
place of
amazes me.
heaven
Yeah,
in synchronized lights in
My
the
mother
city.
used to call it, bye-bye, Anna, you're going to the old country. Yeah, from California.
But it's an issue. I mean, David Ignatius has a novel out.
These are the two areas that public policy makers, together with those that are the creators of these inventions, we need to think these things through.
So what do you blow the whistle on? It's interesting. David Ignatius has a novel out. I don't know if any of you have read it, called The Director. And in it, the CIA director, he's into spy novels, his car is hijacked. His car is hacked and taken over and wrecked in this. And we've seen something like that. I also know there's an effort by auto companies like Toyota, GM, and others to raise questions with those of you in Congress about the privacy of drivers, because the digital tracking that is going on our phones is now going on in our cars. So it's raised a lot of questions where you have unsuspecting consumers that don't realize, in fact, that their digital footprint is so exposed.
Yeah. Well, I think that number one, what do we want to achieve? We want consumers to have confidence in these products so that they buy them. And that's in the interest of the manufacturer, the designer, the creator of these ideas and products. That's number one. The bookend to that is that we need to understand how to prevent the hacking that's taking place. Congress has, I guess, with some legitimacy. It's not like a high point for me, but it is, the effort has been, how soon do enterprises have to report publicly that their system has been hacked? Well, I guess that's interesting, but it's already been done to you. It's already been done to you. And this sense that people have of helplessness when these breaches are so enormous, 143 million people. That's a lot of people.
But Congresswoman,
so I need to get a plug in here.
Please.
So I have asked just about everyone I've met in Silicon Valley the same question. What would you do to address this? And to a person, they advised me that you have to work on prevention and that there are two pillars to this issue. One, systems have to be clean. There has to be hygiene to a system, number one. The other bookend is that you have to have excellent consistent security management. So there's the first is
and this is part of your
do.
best practices legislation.
That's right. Senator Orrin Hatch is carrying the bill in the Senate, and I have it in the House. So, and we've left the setting of standards to NIST,
right?
Because they know how to do it. It's not mandatory; it is voluntary. But my overall goal in this is obviously to reduce the number of breaches because people will know what to do, and that at some point consumers will consider this the good housekeeping seal of approval, so that you know the
I guess
manufacturers, whatever of a product or a service, can say we follow whatever it is.
I agree with everything you said. I think
sounds
what
so
I find,
simple that it's, you think, why isn't someone doing it?
You have different systems, different tiers, different ages. And I guess what I find interesting, and I have not seen much media on it since the Equifax attack, but the same week the Equifax attack was announced, we had the revelations about the Securities and Exchange Commission having been hacked, so that the Edgar online system. So this is deeply.
I don't think
hidden.
anything in terms of hackers is sacred.
Right. So I think in that area, but this is the U.S. government, and then didn't disclose for 2 years that in fact it had been penetrated, but yet the SEC requires public companies to tell them. So there seems to be sort of very inconsistent standards out there, even among those in the government.
It's jumbled, and I think it's jumbled because people don't know quite what to do about it. Most frankly, I mean that's just the bottom line. Because if they did, they already would have come up with something. I don't know how many members of Congress have given, and candidates, State of the Union type speeches about cybersecurity. And I read them, but they don't have any solutions in them. They talk about what we're talking about. 143 million here, SEC over here, the Target, Neiman Marcus, Macy's, you name it. Maybe it isn't Macy's, I don't know, but...
So what do we do? So I want to go to the audience in a second, but what do we do given the very realist picture you just gave us, where it's jumbled, it's confused, you're promoting best practices, but clearly not everyone is engaged in those. So do we just, in order to get to the future, do we just embrace the wild ride, and do we just embrace the fact that we're going to have serious problems? Or do we take a pause?
I don't think that's the best of America to just say, well, let's just get on the back of the turnip truck, and we know it's going to be a bumpy ride.
Yeah, give us the Anna Eshoo brand.
I think that, first of all, 90% of all of this is in the private sector. 10% is government. That's an important 10%. Including all of our agencies that are connected to our intelligence operations. So that 10% is a very important 10%. I think that if we come up with the best practices and standards, and it works for companies, small, medium, and large, there'll be a big return for that because it's far costlier to be hacked than it is to make sure that passwords are changed, all the things that need to be done in terms of security management, and that a system is clean. I don't think that's asking too much of anyone in the private sector or in the public sector as well. I have other problems with what has taken place in the public sector because I don't think they know what they're buying, but that's a whole nother story. You could do a seminar on that one.
Excellent, we probably will.
Yeah.
Yes, Stacy, question right here. Hey, how are you?
Actually, my name's Al Gombas. I'm from the State Department. I want to commend you, first of all, on your being such a great champion on protecting religious minorities around the world. Thank you for that. I'm curious what you think might be the best way to incentivize corporate America to do some of the things that you're talking about. Simply having them with best practices and things in the legislation, I think you may need something more than that to get them to want to do these kinds of things on the front end in the design of these things, and to have these protections in place before they roll out And I'm just curious what you think the best incentive structure might be for something like this.
Thank you.
Thank you and thank you for your kind words. I appreciate it. And thank you for your public work.
So happy
For
he's
our
employed
country.
at the State
Yeah.
Department.
I'm glad to hear there's someone there.
Yeah.
They are unsung heroes.
Yes.
And I have met so many of your colleagues all over the world, and it's a great source of pride. Great source of pride in your knowledge and your service. First of all, I think it's in the interests of a company to avoid being hacked. Mm-hmm. It's costly. It's costly in terms of the reputation of the company. It's costly in terms of trying to repair something after it has happened. It's costly. It's just costly all around, all the way around. So I don't think there's anyone that would raise their hand and say, I'd rather not do anything and be hacked. I don't think that we have thought this through well enough that we would have gotten to the second decade of the 21st century and not figured this out. And it's amazing to me, you know, these two pillars that I've spoken about, these are people from the industry that have told me this. Mm-hmm. And they helped refine some of the different things, you know, to tweak the legislation to help us in it. So I think that prevention is very important. Prevention you can use different sectors. It's better to prevent illness than to have to pick up the tab afterward. Prevention in this whole area, I think, is where we need to focus, take it seriously. And I think that because this is such a global enterprise now of breaking into systems, that those that are the geniuses that will build out the next generation and the generation after that of technology, they certainly are going to be mindful about making it as secure as possible. But what one human being can build, there's someone else that can undermine it.
Let me just ask you very quickly before we close. Congressman Will Hurd has put this idea on the table that I find really intriguing about a cyber national guard, saying that, you know, the government and the various agencies and departments really can't compete with the private sector in terms of pay. You could create something where people could come in for a few years, do national service by the way of this, go back into industry, and it would create opportunities, and it would create greater literacy, in fact, around the country. Are you interested? Would you support something along those?
I would. I think it's a wonderful idea. I didn't put it into legislation, but when I served on the House Intelligence Committee, almost a decade, I thought that it was really very important because for people in the intelligence community, and that's several agencies, and they spend a lot of money on their equipment, to do roundtables. So we brought some of the best and brightest from Silicon Valley to Washington so that they could sit and talk to them, have good conversations, but have the policymakers there so that they would absorb and understand, because it is a responsibility of ours. We're the ones that do the legislation with the money. You want to know where the money is going, right? What you're buying. That's why I said you can have someone that has been an exemplary public servant in the federal government, and they're a GS whatever, and they rise through the ranks, and then they become the person that's in charge of purchasing.
Yeah. Well, ladies and
there
gentlemen,
have been some costly mistakes that we've made. So.
Well, we look forward to seeing how you navigate all of this down the road. And thank you so much for spending time with us.
Oh, I'm delighted.
Ladies
it's an honor to have been invited. Thank you so much to you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
You're wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.